Onke Mkiva, thank you so much for joining me. Really, really thrilled that you made time to meet me today. And congratulations again for being the top 35 under 35 winner in the lead category. I'm so happy to have you here. Maybe let's kick off there. What does it mean to be a top 35 under 35 winner in the lead category?
Thanks, Jabu. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to have me share my story. I think it's a reflection really on how my career has progressed and how I've done over the last 10 years and a bit, and a real privilege because I was put up really against the best in the career. Young people that are doing exciting things. So it's a real honor for me to have been chosen for that category, and it's a testament to uh, the hard work, the support that I've gotten over the years, to become the leader that I am today.
Mm. So what does Cycle look for to award one such a prestigious award? Is it that you can balance their balance sheet more than anyone else, or are there extra things that they look for?
I think firstly, I mean, they look for young CA professionals that are doing exceptional things in the fields that they're in, which is quite exciting because there isn't a script, on what that means, which speaks to really the evolution of the profession over the years, and the flexibility that the profession gives you to really make an impact in various aspects of society and business. And I know that that's probably not natural for accountants to have a gray sort of unstructured criteria to anything that you're doing, but it's around in business, in society, as well as the profession itself. Young people that are doing exceptional things. I think also what they looked for was people that were chartering their own path in the respective fields that they're in, which I suppose is something that a lot of young people aren't aware of. I always say to people that are trying to join my organization or any organization that you get hired for who you are, not to become like the people that are there. Otherwise, the institution is wasting money if you are going to be like the next person. And so I think the top 35 under 35 really speaks to that. People that have deep convictions around value creation in specific aspects of the areas that they're in. And for me, it wasn't just banking, but it was more leadership. And I'll talk a bit later on around what I do. But it was around kind of chartering my own path within a very competitive industry as investment banking.
And did you expect that you'd win? Were you hoping secretly, or was it a total surprise?
So it was an interesting journey, right? When you get nominated, by whoever nominates you, then Psycho gives you a call. And then all of a sudden, it's this intense process of actually trying to unpack where you've added value, submitting a portfolio of evidence, etc. And then you get to meet the other finalists. And then I thought, shucks, like I felt like an imposter. These guys had achieved so much, and they continued to do such amazing things, right? In various aspects. Some are in fitness and health, but they're actually CAs. Some are entrepreneurs that have started businesses in the tech space. Some are CFOs of large organizations, and some are CEOs of large organizations. So you get some in academia. So it's a variety of young people that have done amazing things in different spheres of business and life. And so it was really daunting, until you get a sense that you're actually in the right place. When you also look at what you've achieved, and then you enjoy it. You go through the interviews. I enjoyed my interview. I'm not gonna lie. The questions, the energy, I'd prepared for it. And so I think on the night, I was absolutely, rooting for myself to win. But look, if I didn't and somebody else did, I think, that would have still been very much okay, because, it's really a talented crop that makes it through the final 35.
And what type of questions do they ask? You say enjoy the interview.
So it was, the interesting thing is, you get asked around what you've achieved, which is just like, so amazing and authentic. But the judges push the boundaries around impact and your specific value add. So if I think of some of the questions that are around, what drives my passion for the continent, because I do business outside of South Africa. And there were questions around what should we be doing right as a continent, and how I'm spending my time to make sure that I'm pushing things that direction. And there were questions on stuff that I did outside of work on the education side. I've put it on pause for now because I've taken some other studies, so I'm struggling with capacity. But I used to do some work in the education space, so questions around that. The guys just kept like throwing curveballs, and it was quite competitive and very fun.
Is it awesome? You're talking to us about doing work in the continent. I know you are a co-lead of the trade. Is it trade and working capital
debt and trade solutions?
Debt and trade solutions at RMB. And what exactly do you do? That sounds like a big responsibility, to be leading a team that's looking into investments in the continent. For a young professional like yourself to have a role like that, that's massive. So what exactly do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, it's an absolute privilege, right? I work for an institution whose brand and values, transcend many decades, and for people who had a vision around value creation that I couldn't have even thought about, that concept before they established it. So I think it's a privilege to walk into a platform and a brand and an institution that truly represents values that resonate with me. And those values are really around having an impact on sustainable development, and really supporting ideas, operators, and governments that are committed to building the various economies that we focus on. And I like to think of what we do actually as not lending. I always say to my team, we don't lend money, right? We support operators to build sustainable businesses, and governments to build sustainable economies. And that speaks to how you show up, and how you view your value add when you sit in front of clients. And what that means is, we show up there with the type of intellectual capital that a client wouldn't otherwise access, which is not just the team of 12 in my business, but the whole institution and the various support areas that help us do what we do best. And much as we provide capital, we don't see what we do as purely capital providers, but also a channel to other forms of capital that we've got access to that the client wouldn't otherwise have access to, be it debt, trade, or even equity, right? And then the last piece that we hold quite dearly in our hearts is the access to networks, because we see ourselves as a channel to an ecosystem of various capabilities. And that could be anything. It could be a supplier to a client that they didn't have access to, that we have access to. Because when you think about the African problem statement, it's around what are the gaps that we have, and who are the people that are best placed to provide value to those gaps. And often African economies aren't as structured as developed economies. And so you can't come in a siloed approach in where you can do that. But if you truly vested in value, one, you define value very differently from just in a narrow-minded way that benefits yourself. And then two, you define your value add a lot more broader than simply the product that you provide, because the problem statement is a lot broader for us. So yeah, that's really how we think about it.
That's interesting. So you obviously have experience working both in South Africa and doing business in the rest of the continent. What would you say are some of the observations you've made regarding, the ease of doing business both locally and in the rest of the continent? What's different? What's similar? What stands out? What are your key takeaways so far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll maybe start with the obvious stuff. So, South Africa is multiple times bigger than most of the African economies. In sub-Saharan Africa, really second to Nigeria. From a development perspective, miles and miles ahead of many economies on the continent in terms of, the infrastructure from a financial capital markets perspective, just the ability to move goods and services. If you think about roads, and really the soft capabilities that sit above those things, whether it be insurance products, whether it be technological capabilities, it all kind of has a ripple effect. So that's South Africa, and that's the story. When you then flip it over to the continent, and then South Africa is kind of largely structured in its economy as a Western economy in a way, if you compare it to many other African markets, and that's mainstream economy. Because my view is that South Africa has two parallel economies. There's mainstream economy and there's the economy that we've all forgotten about. So I'm talking about mainstream. When you flip it over to the continent, what you find is, I think the economy and the way of doing business is a lot closer to how African economies should be like. I often talk about the language of the heart, which is an African thing and not a Western thing. That if you walk into an African economy outside of South Africa, the way people speak, the way people connect is very different from what you find in South Africa. And I think often if you come with the South African approach, there is an element of rejection that you'll find. Because as I said, the framework of how South Africans connect, in my view, is actually not African. I don't know what it is. But on the continent, people actually want to connect with you.
Can you give us some examples there?
I'll give you some examples. So I suppose that the first thing is, let's just say, the view of order of business. So I'm flying into, pick a country, Nigeria, Ghana, whatever it is. There's a project that would like to support. 9 out of 10 times you walk in South Africa into a meeting, within 5 minutes, you're already into business, right? In Africa, that's not the way, right? People want to hear you. They want to know about your personal story. They probably want to spend a little bit more time having a coffee with you before getting into business. And also, I sort of touched on it earlier around they're not looking to operate in silos. Okay, you're a banker, so the only thing we can talk about is money. Okay, you're a lending team, so the only thing we can talk about is lending. It's a conversation around, it's a partnership, because much as I walk in as a lending person, I've got many other networks that sit behind me, and so does the person on the other side of the table. And that's really the African way of doing business. And I'm talking about like sharp, smart people here. I'm not talking about people that have, all the time in the day to talk about, God knows what. These are people that are really sharp, but it's a way of connection, of connecting that speaks to, long-term partnership, that speaks to common values. This is actually something that is quite important in many markets on the continent, not coming with preconceived ideas, but really giving the other person a sense of the values that you stand behind. Development is an important thing on the continent. Integrity contrary to what many may believe, is a very, very important thing on the continent. You've got many people that are really committed to unlocking value, that are really committed to efficiencies, uprightness, and these are the people that I interact with, and myself and my team interact with almost on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
You seem to have a passion for the continent. Even your current role, did it pick you or did you pick it?
Yeah, good question. To be honest with you, it probably starts with how I grew up, right? So I'm a rural boy from the Eastern Cape. Grew up in a community that is deeply connected. You know, I often say this to my wife. So she's from Klerksdorp, which is more of a township type area. You know, that where I come from, you can walk into any household and like grab a glass of water. It doesn't matter where it is, you know, in the rural area.
Yeah.
You know, and
does that still exist?
It exists. It exists today. And I often contrast it with visiting a friend in Joburg, where firstly you have to call, and then two, you get to the gate and you need a PIN code, yeah? And then secondly, they need to call them to allow you to let you in. It's just, you know, so it probably comes from that, you know, the idea of connectivity and the idea of what makes us one people, you know. Growing up, I wasn't trying to connect dots, but when I think back, it probably comes from that, you know. And then I grew up very close to my dad, who was a teacher, and I think many of us would know, if your parents were a teacher, very strict people, well thought out, you know, everything must be thought out to the T. And they raise you with a lot of awareness, right? And again, that sort of perhaps maybe impacted how I think. And so when it came to me choosing a career, post articles, I actually wanted to work in a space that was less mature and less figured out. You know, like I made the example around the South African economy. The South African economy did not appeal to me because everything is, you know, there's like structures, and it just didn't feel like the sort of thing I wanted to get involved in. But I did have an interest in the small business segment. And so when I joined the organization that I currently work for, I joined to go to the commercial division, and not the investment banking division, because I just felt like there was little incremental value to add in the investment banking division. Everyone knows what they're doing. And so I bumped into this Africa opportunity within the investment banking division. And I thought, okay, this is different. You know, it's not bread and butter South African investment banking. Our organization is still very much growing into the continent. So there was an element of trying to figure things out. And that was appealing. And as I said, the opportunity to really add meaningful value was obvious in my mind. You know, we were small. We're smaller than many competitors on the continent. There was a lot more opportunity for development in the markets that we were looking at. And we hadn't even touched, you know, the surface on the continent. And so the opportunity just made sense.
Yeah.
So it found me.
Fantastic.
Basically.
That's brilliant. And you mentioned you lead a team of, is it 12 investment professionals? Where are those based?
Sure.
Countrywide.
Yeah. So we've got 2 in Kenya. We've got 3 in Nigeria, and then we've got 7 here in South Africa. We do have colleagues in many other countries on the continent that we work with that service the broader investment banking division. So I definitely see those people as partners and part of our team as well. And basically, I mean, we cover sub-Saharan Africa, and the way we cover the continent is a partnership between the professionals in the country, as well as the folks that sit in Joburg.
Let's delve a little bit deeper into the actual work itself. So trade, working capital, debt, um, and you are leading that team. What exactly happens on a day to day?
Sure.
Take us through a typical deal maybe that you guys will work on, and what do you do? You know, what
Sure.
does the investment professional do, and
Yeah.
and what does Onke do?
Sure. So maybe before the deal, I think my specific core responsibility is setting up strategy and focusing on implementation of strategy. And the way we think about strategy is we think about markets and areas on the continent that present opportunity to unlock value, which then informs our strategy to the extent that we feel that we are best placed to add value in those spaces. So that could be country, it could be sector, it could be client. That's how we think about the business. Obviously, the guardrails, are the group's kind of risk management policies and, where we can and can't go. Once we've set that out, then it becomes, which people do we feel possess, the best capabilities to unlock that value from a client perspective. Or another way to put it, who do we think will be the winners and who do we think will be the losers? And so we align ourselves with the people that we think possess the best capabilities to unlock value. So a good example would be, there is an increasing push for digitalization on the continent. And there is a need to bridge the infrastructure gap from a connectivity perspective. And maybe the observation is that, look, the big players aren't able to get into certain pockets of that value chain. And there are smaller players that are starting to see that opportunity and are looking to unlock that value. We'll go into that space, we'll assess who's doing what, we'll understand that space properly, and we'll formulate a strategy around which people are we going to support based on character, based on time and money invested into the space, based on the team's capability, as well as whether we think their business model makes sense or not, and some of the people that they've partnered around to make this thing work. So that's kind of the framework in which we think about the business. And then we've identified Jabu as the guy. We try and connect, so we'll try and really understand, Jabu's management team, and ensure that values are aligned in terms of what he's doing. We obviously wouldn't support, guys that are in for a quick buck. We want people that are deeply invested. We want to play alongside those people. And we think that, and this speaks to what we do on a daily basis. If we pursue opportunities that everybody else is pursuing, then we're doing something wrong, because our edge should be to see what other people cannot see so that we can unlock incremental value. And so then we will spend time understanding your business, understanding your business model as a team with other stakeholders internally, be it risk, be it business, be it our seniors, etc. And that's many conversations, that's many Excel spreadsheets, that's many presentations from your side, and many trips into where you're based and where you are doing your business. And then, we sort of bring that together internally, put together an investment pack that we then kind of screen through, our various processes with a bid to seek support to support your business. And to the extent that one of our products wasn't suitable for what you're looking for, we still see it as our responsibility to bring whatever forms of capital that perhaps we don't sit with that is useful for your business, on the earlier point that I made around how we think about incremental value. Yeah, and it's late nights, it's hard grinds, it's intense debates, to try and get to the right answer, and it's lots and lots of fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We throw these terms around like everyone knows what we're talking about: trade capital, working capital.
Yes.
Can you just break it down for us?
Yeah.
What is that?
Sure. So let's start with the one that's more liquid, or I'll have to explain that again, to one that's more long term. So trade is simply I've got an idea. I don't have all the money to facilitate my idea, and I've got products to move. How do I get money to be able to get that product and move it in a very short space of time, and then take that money back to the person that I borrowed it from? So that really what trade is. So someone wants to ship equipment from China in order to do what they need to do in South Africa. Depending on the type of agreement that is in place, we could either provide some form of guarantee to the supplier that if he does ship the product into South Africa, it lands in Durban, we will then pay them, because we know the South African that is buying the equipment from China, in order to mitigate the risk between the two parties. Because the alternative is the person who's buying must have all the money today and must pay it over, but do they actually know that the equipment will arrive? Maybe not. So it's all around financial instruments that are introduced in order to facilitate what is already happening. Exactly. So that's the trade side. Working capital side then says, okay, the equipment is here or the inventory is here. I am selling it. Perhaps I'm selling it on credit, as an example, and so I only receive my money in 3 months' time. And basically, you can get a bank to give you a portion of the money now, so that you can go and do other things. Maybe you need to buy more inventory to grow the business, and then it just becomes a cycle of using cash and getting inventory and selling on credit and getting the bank to bridge you, and then when you receive the money, pay back the bank. And the reason why these instruments and these capabilities are important is they provide an incremental effect. Because if you have to wait for your own money to do something, then it might take you 10 years to do what might take you a year or a two on the other side. And then the last bit, which is both kind of debt and equity, speaks to capital that you need in order to spend on long-term infrastructure of some sort, in order to grow the business, be it a bridge, be it a road, be it a building, be it digital infrastructure. So that's kind of the capital structure that we play in the role that I'm currently in at the moment.
Fantastic. And you are, I think, the youngest member in your exco.
Yeah. So I am.
Tell us about that.
I don't think it's something that necessarily is apparent. It just happens to be the case, because I work with very strong people that are highly demanding, that are exceptionally talented, absolutely respectful, and see me as a peer. I think what keeps us together, and the reason why we're there is the common objective to grow the business and add value. And that's kind of the business of the day and how we interact. So age really is not a factor, so to speak. I suppose getting the role initially, there was that imposter feeling, but I was also quite fortunate, because I'm a very conservative person. I don't take a lot of risks. So coming into that responsibility, I probably didn't say much, and it didn't really bother me, because I'm naturally like a very risk averse person. So what that did is, it allowed me time, to understand the space, observe the space, see where I can add incremental value. I'm also generally very tough on myself to add value. That if there isn't value to add because it is covered, I'll often not try and like jump in. And so what it has done then is, it's given me a sense of authority, because when I add input, I'm certain that there's value to unlock, and so I don't have to like think 100 times as to whether, do I speak now, do I not? Because if I don't have to, then I'm comfortable not to, because I'm very risk averse anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, fantastic. Talking about, how you approach this role and some of your, I suppose, values and general perspectives, to be appointed as a leader in a well recognized institution. I think it speaks volumes about the type of person that you are, which I think, does show in your perspectives. I'm interested to know, what do you do behind closed doors, that's helped you become, the leader that you are, the person you are, the professional that you are. Because oftentimes, it's the things that are done behind closed doors that make the huge difference and help us leap, to positions such as the one that you have.
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good question, Jabu. There's probably three things, right, that I think, are top of mind for me. It's maybe one is how I think about, the hours that I put in, and like really, really hard work. And I think that's important because, I often have to gauge myself through the journey as to whether, um, not I'm putting enough, as if there is a finite, input that you put in and go, this is enough, but more to say, when I'm not working hard enough, I need to be able to see that. Obviously, I've got blind spots, etc. So this doesn't mean that I know everything or I see everything, but just at least as a compass for myself. I think that's absolutely critical. And the way to gauge that is, I suppose, the assignments at hand, as well as, what is coming in the immediate. So what I mean by that is, if there's an assignment at hand where you either need to make a decision or you need to putting in hours, once it gets to delivery, are you comfortable that this is the best that you could offer, right? And many answers are going to be no. You want to have more yeses than nos, right? So practically, that's what it means. How hard you work. And often people lead with, perception from outside than internal judgment. Yeah, which is what people call office politics or whatever, corporate politics or whatever. You can't lead with that. You've got to lead with your own convictions around the value that you add, and the quality that you produce. Related to that, one of the things that, is a very strong, approach of mine in my career is, I never want to have to explain myself. If I have to explain why I'm sitting at the table, I probably shouldn't be sitting there, right? And this speaks to this thing around constantly checking yourself in the output that you're putting in the hours. It's costly. It costs, time with your family. It costs, friends. It costs many things, right? You've got to be prepared to pay the price. And then, the second one would be personal awareness, which is, I suppose, in mainstream kind of business language, what people call soft skills, but there's nothing soft about soft skills. Okay, soft skills are probably harder than technical skills, both in terms of impact and how to actually get them right. And that, I mean, I could talk all day about soft skills. From values, what you stand for, how strong you are on how you think about value add, because, corporate is very, very noisy. what you're going to see someone getting promoted because they took a certain route, and you're going to want to change that route. You're going to see, I don't know, maybe kind of senior management looking at a certain thing that you're not involved in as being more value additive for the institution, and maybe you're going to think, should you look at that? You have to be, you you obviously have to have people around you and guardrails that help you keep in check, in order to not, in order to kind of use or be self-aware in a way that is also safe, because you could be having certain views around whether you're doing the right thing or not, but actually you're not, right? So it is a bit of a tricky one around, okay, who are the people that can be my mirror as I continue to self-reflect, and ensure that I'm aware. But that's absolutely critical, and I've got a couple of stories around that. So when I joined the Africa business, as I said to you, it still is a massive growth area for my organization. It's certainly not a big pool of the business, but it was even smaller then. And I don't know how many times over the years I would sit with someone senior in the organization who would ask me, "What the hell are you doing in this space? Like, what are you doing in Africa? You're too young, da 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 da." And I saw what I saw, right? And I hated it at times, because it was just this thing in my heart that drew me to the space that, was hard to explain. I could see the value. It was so not obvious. Like, Africa's hard. Like, it's hard. Anyone who operates on the continent will tell you that they hate it, but they love it at the same time. So that's kind of where I was. And talking about being self-aware, it's something that I had to really, really keep myself in check as far as my career progression is concerned. And fast forward, 10 years later, the number of people who are focused on South Africa that talk to me about wanting to join the Africa business is insane, right? It's just crazy. So self-awareness then says, where do I believe I've got value to unlock, and how do I do that? What are the things that I need? Um, and it doesn't mean that you try and be good at everything. Self-awareness just says, where do I possess the greatest capabilities to unlock value, and how do I use myself to unlock that value? What do I bring on the table? I make this joke with my team. So, like, financial modeling is absolutely important in what we do, right? And there was a time where, I like properly needed to get this thing right. But I got to a point where, honestly, it just becomes an 80-20, I can do it, and like, I can do it well, but like, it's one of the things that, I'll say to like junior members of my team, that if you want to learn anything from me, stay away from me if you need to learn financial modeling, because for me, it's an 80-20 from a decision-making perspective, right? I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I can make a decision with this. It doesn't need to be perfect in my world. So that's like another good example of what self-awareness means, but then it means I need to find somebody else who considers this thing absolutely important, so that they can bring it to the table, so that we can make decisions. You know what I'm saying? And also it goes into, if there's a problem statement, and there's many of us that can avail themselves to add value to the problem statement, there are things that I've got to be able to say, no, so and so, I think you're best placed to come and add value here. So self-awareness is the second one. And then I would say the other thing about self-awareness, sorry, the last one is just around, purpose and values, and what you represent, which is maybe interlinked with the point that I made, that there's lots of noise around us. There's way many things that people will bring to you in all sorts of directions that you'll be pulled towards, and your personal values and what you consider to be your purpose is absolutely key, from a self-awareness perspective, because it's another anchor that will help you as you navigate your career. And then the last one is probably people, and people, I would say, across your different aspects of your life, not just from a work environment. um from a work environment, I think you you want to make sure that you've got a network across different aspects of the organization, from the most senior person in the organization to
How do you build that?
the most junior person in the organization. How do you build that? um the way I've done it is I've looked for opportunities where we've connected on something. It could be something small, and then I widen that. I'm a sucker for connection. Like, human connection is the one thing that is one of the things that are very close to my heart. So, typical example, I'm a junior, I'm presenting something. One senior person has a very specific question. Okay, actually, I might not even be presenting. My boss is presenting. But then the senior person is like, this particular question on this thing. I'm scared in the meeting. I can't answer this thing. My boss answers it. It passes. I'm like, actually, I do understand that thing. I just wasn't confident enough to speak about it in the meeting. After the meeting or the following day, you had a couple of questions on this thing, can we speak about it, because da 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 da. Because then it's not a cold call. People have a connection in their minds, and you're not gonna sit there and like think, shucks, what do I say to this person? It was something to speak about, and then you go, actually, this is who I am, this is what I'm about. It would be good to get your input on XYZ. I find that is the easiest way, to connect to people that are important in your navigation of the organization and your career, but you don't have the confidence to. And then the second way that I think that works is, if someone is a clear stakeholder of the area that you're in, always a good link to say, look, I don't know, maybe you sit in finance, in a sub division of an international listed company, and you want to talk to the guy right at the top. Look, if let's say the group financial chief financial officer, whatever. Look, if they are somehow an important stakeholder of your business or your function, I mean, I think it would be expected, that you'd reach out to such an individual. It's all about context. So perhaps the context there is, this is where I am. This is kind of how I fit in the organization. I would like to talk about XYZ in relation to, whatever. But as long as there are links, links. It's actually, now that I'm talking about it, it's interesting that we are all a lot more amenable to doing something for somebody that we know because of connection. If there isn't something that connects us, then it's a cold call. And as the name says, it's cold. Right?
Yeah.
So I think people must do a lot to consider links that connect them with where value unlock could sit. Yeah.
I believe in that pursuit. It's possible that one may hit areas of disappointment. You try to reach out to someone, and
Yes.
for whatever reason, they're busy, they can't give you time. How do you navigate through those moments of disappointment? Do you have any advice for our viewers, who may be attempting building those connections in their organizations, but time and time again, they just keep, getting disappointed and not being heard? Any thoughts there?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really believe in, and because it's worked for me, hopefully it works most of the times, is
Yeah.
sometimes you have to go slower to go faster.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to take a couple of steps back, observe, and see. It's almost like hunting. I don't hunt,
Yeah.
but I love the bush, and I'm talking about hunting from a predator prey perspective,
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
hunting that human beings do.
Yeah.
If you think about how predators hunt, it's around spending a lot of time, effort, and energy to make sure you get it right than it is about
Going
running
for it.
fast and
Yeah.
chasing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I don't know if people know is many predators in a herd of prey only target one. That even if the other one was like here,
Passing it.
and then the one was like 5 meters,
Yeah.
they only go for one,
Mm.
right? And I think in our careers, we can take a lesson from this,
Yeah.
where you really spend a lot of time on where value unlock sits, who the person may be, or who the people may be. And sometimes it means that if I sit, I don't know, like 5 layers or 7 layers below the person that I'm trying to get to,
Yeah.
maybe the target is 3 layers above first before getting to the 7th layer, right? And also, like you say, you're not always gonna get it right, but I think if just try and hit as many connections as possible, but you kind of deeply reflect on who are the people that could add meaningful value in your career life. If you observe the extent to which they may or may not be prepared to help you navigate that, because people have personalities, right? If I go about my job and I don't want to talk to anybody, then I don't, and sorry if you wanted to talk to me, but I'm just not that kind of guy, and that is fine. So it's all around these things where it's all around this reflection, and not necessarily going as fast as you can, but kind of balancing impact, and then I think if you continuously hitting disappointment, you probably want to speak to somebody that you can trust around. I feel like there isn't an opportunity for me to connect with people that can be helpful for my career here. And you might just have to consider if you're in the right organization or not, because where there is potential and where there is value, I struggle to see why people would not embrace that. Then if they weren't, like I said, you're probably in the wrong team, or you're probably in the wrong organization, or you're probably not as value accretive as you think you are, which is also a possibility.
Yeah.
So it's all about self-awareness. It's all about being aware of the environment that you're in, reflect a lot, observe. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love that answer. I want to go back to this area of leadership. You are a leader. Some people say leaders are born, others say no, leaders are developed. How have you developed yourself as a leader, and how do you continue to do that for you to live at the apex and make sure you continuously hitting the mark? I believe there are certain things that you need to do as a leader.
Yeah.
What are some of those things for you to help you always, function at that level?
So leadership is different from management. So management is around someone who can do something well, and they are trusted to provide guidance to the rest of everybody else because they can do this thing really well. Leadership is chartering a group of people to the unknown. So leadership is the exact opposite. Nobody knows what we're doing. Somebody needs to use personal skills outside of the technical point that we're dealing with to help us get to an answer. The president during COVID, actually any head of state during COVID is a perfect example of what leadership is. Getting the government departments to do what they do, that's management. It's not wrong, it's just different. So leadership is very different from management.
Yeah.
Right? Was my point number one. Management is about guiding people on how to do something that you do well. That is not leadership. It's management. Management is not wrong. It's just not leadership. Leadership is the exact opposite. It's chartering a group of people into the unknown. None of us know where we need to go, but leaders possess certain skill set that sit outside the core problem that are sufficient to guide the group of people in navigating the problem. And often leaders aren't the people with the best answers to solve the problem, but they possess a certain skill set that either motivates, that either inspires, that provides a level of confidence, that provides a level of guidance to
clarity.
people. Exactly. On a problem statement that they themselves don't know. One of the good examples of this is COVID. None of the heads of states knew what this thing was about, but it's the people that possessed the right balance of skill set to give enough confidence to their countries that they could navigate this thing. And the people that had the right skill set to absorb the different levels of advice to get to the right answer. And a perfect leadership predicament is whether you close the country, people get hungry, or you open the country and people die. That's what leadership is about. So the first thing to your question would be that management piece is important, but it's not leadership. To do what you do very well and do it better than everybody else, right? That would be the first one, and that's about putting in the hours. It's about working as hard as you can. So that's certainly something that for me is key. And then the second one is it's training what is more leadership skills than management. So I've personally done courses, on the question that you asked, are leaders are born or they're made? I don't know, but whether they were born or made, I think training is important. Yeah. So I've done a number of courses around personal leadership mastery, self-awareness, and those kind of things, because they don't come naturally. And also, depending on the organization that you're in, sometimes people overemphasize the management bit, whereas management is for maintenance. The management skill is to maintain. It's not to take to the next level. That is leadership, and they're two different things. So I've done some training around that, and then this one is hard because there's kind of no school for it per se. I think you've got to really spend some time figuring out who you are, which is different from the courses around. It's probably linked to the courses around personal leadership mastery, etc. But as you grow, it probably comes with a bit of age as well. You've got to be clear on the things that make you stand out, and things that are really close to your heart, because those are the things that you will do well. It can't be you can't be good at everything, and that's okay. You've got to walk into certain instances and go, I don't know, okay, and I'm probably not the best person to try and figure it out. And then unless there wasn't another person, you could do like a trial and error into the thing, and hopefully you come out okay. But you've got to know really well, your values, the things that you're good at, and purpose. So I spend a lot of time on those things. And often I've come up against decisions and potential opportunities that it was hard for me to say no, but I had to, because I have this vague conviction, hopefully it's right, of what my purpose is. Like this thing looks like it's like the best opportunity ever, and I've had to deeply reflect and go, where do I want to go? Where do I see my purpose? Where do I see the area of impact? And then the fourth and last one, some people might have different views on this, so take it with a pinch of salt, is it also comes from my conviction on what leadership is. Be careful of looking for authority from the things that you know. And be careful of always wanting to be the person that knows, because you're not learning. If you're always the person that knows in the room, then there's a problem. Okay. And so how have I cultivated that? I've studied like the most weirdest of things after my CA qualification, right? Maybe after doing CFA and failing like 3 times and dropping out, which was more of a finance stuff. After that, I've gone into like doing courses in kind of developing emerging markets, in how entrepreneurs have like developed health capabilities in like emerging markets. I've done stuff in tech. I've done stuff in entrepreneurship. So I've done like very different things that just stimulate my thinking. And I think that has helped me to become a little bit more comfortable with the unknown, right? And an interesting thing is, it's probably something that we are going through as a business now, where we're going into so many uncharted territories, which is not natural, for investment bankers. You would think that investment bankers do very interesting things. Investment bankers, their authority is doing what they know, what they did yesterday, literally. It's very unnatural for people. It's very unnatural for bankers to walk into a room and be comfortable that they don't know. Okay. Because the authorities are, like I did this thing like 5 years ago. Yeah, this is how we did it. But I've kind of developed this level of comfortability to not be the person that knows. So first, technicals management, I think you've got to master it. Improve yourself from a leadership perspective, which is not management. That is courses, talking to people, etc. And then the other one was around personal values, and then lastly, curiosity for innovation and something different.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You've mentioned studying and training a couple of times. Are you currently studying?
Yeah, sadly.
What are you studying, by the way?
I'm doing an MBA.
Okay.
With an institution called Imperial College, out of London.
Fantastic. And I'm curious to know, for someone who's in the banking space, which, holistically speaking, it's a technical field or discipline. What's led to you taking up an MBA, especially at this time in your career?
So I was looking so as I said before, whilst banking may seem like it's an entrepreneurial and a space to pioneer things, probably a little bit more not than yes, right? Okay. I suppose, to be fair to the industry, that's largely because the capital that bankers provide should come after many other forms of capital that must take the first level of risk, right? From seed funding to venture capitalists to private equity firms, actually from your family money to seed funding to venture capitalists to private equity, then banks come in. So to be fair to the industry, it's not meant to fund just about every other idea that somebody has, right? And so I was looking for, given where the continent is, I was looking for, something that could stimulate my thinking around, how to develop like grassroots ideas and potential solutions outside of finance. And so I looked for programs that would allow me to keep my job whilst doing the program.
Okay.
And then I was looking for an internationally recognized program that again, would allow me to do this whilst I live at home, but also allowed me the opportunity to travel the world and go and meet other people, see other things. And then it had to focus on, technology, entrepreneurship, and that sort of stuff, which again is very different from what I do. And so the MBA, looked interesting. There's quite a bit of the MBA program that is stuff that I know already, like corporate finance and accounting and those kind of things. And actually, those are the things that I hate because I already know. The parts that I enjoy, is the project around problem solving. It's programs around tech capabilities. It's going into other parts of the world, for immersion type excursions where you sit with a group of companies and a group of incubator programs. And understand what capabilities are being developed in that country for what particular problems in those countries. And I mean, I've come back and I've connected a couple of people, from those trips overseas where I think there's value to unlock between whatever is being done on the continent and outside. And that's really why it was interesting for me.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. As a wrap up, I'm keen to get to know more about your upbringing and background, family. You obviously from the Eastern Cape. You mentioned your dad was a teacher. Talk to us about your upbringing. What when you reflect back to those early days, what memorable moments come up, exciting times you had, maybe a little bit of beating by the parents that came to play to make sure that Onke turns up to be a well-disciplined boy.
Yeah. No, so look, I mean, I grew up in a very I'm a raw boy, right? I grew up in a very connected society, and I think that's probably informed my thinking for the greater part of how I carry out my life. A very authentic place as well, where problems and challenges are shared at an extended family or community level, which brings an element of authenticity in how people do their life. I grew up with both my folks, and I've got a massive family. Within my household, there's 5 of us, and then my dad has 7 other kids, so I've got like 11 siblings.
Wow.
so that's kind of where.
Are you the youngest or middle?
So
eldest?
of the 5, I'm the 4th of 5.
Okay.
Yeah, the math gets a bit tricky if you extend it to the other 12.
Cool stuff.
So that's the kind of family setup that I grew up in. Grew up in a Christian environment. So again, when it comes to how you see people and how you value life, I think the Christian faith does, frame that in a way that is maybe a bit different from how corporate works, etc., which then impacts how I view people and how I seek to connect with people. And I mean, the one thing that I'm grateful for, reflecting back, obviously, looking back is always Vision 2020. It's the confidence to and the confidence to accept oneself and to be yourself. growing up in a place where you're accepted, in a family where you are loved, means that when you encounter the contrary later on in life, you very quickly reject it, right? Because as I said, like, the world is too loud. There's too many things that will tell you, you are this, you shouldn't be that, and whatever. But if you grow up in a place that affirms you, you may come up with like a few bumps and curves here and there, but I think you always go back to that. I mean, I remember, and it's again something that I always tell young guys that are either trying to get into my organization or any other place. One of the things that stood out when I joined, when I started working for the first time, and this is probably true for just about all of corporate South Africa, is it felt uncomfortable, to have the accent that I had. It felt uncomfortable to be black, in corporate South Africa, which is a weird thing, right? Because like the majority of South Africa is black. But anyway, but I think as I grew up in my career, I went back to the affirmation that I had grown up in, and the values that I grew up with. And even though, for example, the level to which people were connected or are connected in corporate is maybe different from what I'd grown up with, I considered this to be right, and so that's kind of how I've lived, my career. And it goes back to the point around having grown up in a certain way. At some point, you gravitate towards that, and I'm grateful for that. Grew up there, schooled there in the Eastern Cape. It was a closed society, I must say. That's maybe the one, negative. If I could change it, I would, because it's very closed. It's very isolated to the real world. And lots of decisions get made outside of that place, that impact that place. So if there was one thing that I would change, it would be the level of awareness and the level of awareness of how interconnected the world is, so that part of the world can take part in either decision making, whatever the case may be, to the extent that it will be impacted by those decisions. So that would be the one thing. And then moved up to Joburg for varsity in 2009, 10, 11, and 12, and then started working in 13.
Okay.
That's my story.
Fantastic. Being 4 or 5, and maybe, I don't know, 3 of the 12 to the bottom, do you find you had to always compete for your position, given you're like right
So
at the bottom?
Funny enough, not. I think my so we've got one older sister. The eldest is our sister.
Yeah.
But I think my 2 other brothers probably saw themselves as a lot older than me, even though they weren't really that older than me.
Yeah.
There was by and large, there wasn't a lot of competition, but naturally there were a couple of fights over the years.
Sibling rivalry.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I see even now, because I've got 2 boys. My wife and I have 2 boys, 2 and 3. And you can see instances of protection, where they feel they must protect each other against us. There's like hugging, but then there's also times of competition.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit of a love and hate relationship that goes on, the normal sibling rivalry.
Yeah. Awesome. Any parting words before we close up? I'm keen to know if there's a next big chapter that you are looking at.
Yeah, so maybe not. maybe nothing big bang blockbuster.
Yeah.
I think it's really just keeping my head down in a couple of things that I'm involved in, of which my day job is the biggest of those things. There's lots of exciting things that we're thinking about as a business in areas of value unlock. Look, depending on the person that is listening, right? I would say my deep conviction is that this continent has a lot of potential. My sense is, the only way we're going to unlock value is by developing more local capabilities. That could be growing a vegetable stall to a truck, and then from a truck to a shop, and then from a shop to a vegetable chain. And I think that as Africans, we need to embrace people that are creating value in that way, and to the extent that we can support, those are the things that we need to support. I mean, this parallel economy in South Africa is not sustainable. I think whilst something like the KZN riots were instigated by some other motivations, but they are also a lived experience. You can't run away from that. And none of us knows how long we can sustain this level of inequality in the country. And I think the government has done really well in sort of bringing people that set outside the core employment opportunities in South Africa, like you and I. I think we can grow from that. I think the next level is probably at actual entrepreneurship and innovation level. And I think every professional that actually cares about this space should probably be doing a lot to try and add value there. Otherwise, we continue in this trajectory. It's just not sustainable. Yeah.
Onke, thank you so much for the chat. Really, really enjoyed it. And I'm sure our viewers will as well. Thank you.
Thanks, man. It was awesome. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Appreciate it.